Let's talk about, what does my kid trigger my stuff? So a big part of parenting special needs kids, neurodivergent, kids with mental health issues, is sometimes it can be super triggering. I'm super upfront that when my Max, was in the throes of his pants, he triggers me so much and reminds me of just a hot-tempered family member. And I know us Italians, we feel things very strongly. But this is somebody that, like, I grew up with punching holes on a wall and things like that. Like, hated every minute of it. I hate chaos. I like order, right? Who can relate to that? So let's talk about what are our most common behaviors that trigger parents. And also let's talk about what are some of the things that trigger us, right? So when we have kids, what triggers us, right? These are the top things. Disrespectful behavior. They're so disrespectful. Defiance. How about doing stuff in public? I mean, that would just throw me into a panic. Like, if something went down, there was going to be a behavior in the public. I don't really, I'm the daughter of Philomena, so I don't really give a crap what people think. But I did care because I was afraid maybe something would happen, like, Child Protective Services would show up, or the police, or some other thing, right? Like, your mind goes into this panic mode, right? Arguing is just a big one, right? Our kids are dysregulated. So not only are they going to be what feels like disrespectful language, they're going to argue more, right? Because maybe their go-to is that all the time, right? And it's just not easy to, and maybe that's just your kid. There's nothing clinically wrong with him. He's just more of an argumentative kid. I gotta say, screen time. If I had $1 for every parent who's like just almost off the call with me, and they go, "I just have one more question, Dr. Bro." 9 times out of 10, it's screen time. How do I manage it? What do I do about it? Right? These are common things that we all deal with, right? Making a mess and not cleaning it up, right? I mean, how many times do I find empty boxes, which I thought was something that we still had in the pantry? I think that should be uh, a jailable offense, to be honest, right? And I joke, but it's one of those things that, like, you put a perimenopausal woman who's about to make something because she thought the item was in the pantry. I mean, that's enough for a shakedown, as we like to call it in our house, which is really just a funny term of, like, you're going to get mad. I'm going to get mad. Procrastination related to homework or any school thing can be very, very triggering. You can feel so agitated. I see this a lot with parents who aren't procrastinators, right? So I like to do things very far in advance, and I hate procrastination only because then it impacts what I'm doing, right? And you just developmentally, you start to see it. Even my kid who likes everything planned is sort of slipping into this procrastination route. And I'm trying to think about what are ways that I can support it without being reactive, right? And I definitely have let failures happen. Like, sorry, you're on your own. I gave you the clear warning of that, and then watch them dysregulate. And then I was like, keeping it together. Lying is a big one that feels so intentful and feels so hurtful to parents. And kids lie for a variety of reasons. Go back and listen to that. I have a great blog on that. Lack of gratitude, even eating. Kids' resistance to eating due to ARFID or different components can be very triggering for parents. And I would say, I'm sure there are other things on this list. If I forgot something, put it down. But these are some of the most common things with disrespectful language, arguing, screen time, probably procrastination, not doing homework, lying are probably the biggest ones that I see as high conflict. And when parents fall into behavior patterns, parents and kids fall into these behavior patterns of conflict, it can lead to a lot of yelling, what I call fact fighting, where I told you did that, and no, you didn't. This is that. And in my house, we don't yell. We just go, let's go to the videotape because we have videos, cameras everywhere. Don't ask. Um, and we just joke about it, right? And it's helpful, right? The kids are like, I was like, let's go to the videotape on that. And they're like, oh, okay. I mean, some of this is normal, but when it's a go-to repetitive pattern, you got yourself a problem. Like you can't just put your blinders on it. So what are ways that we struggle, right? Right. What do we bring to the table? So that's our kids' behaviors. Those are our most common kids' behaviors. What are some of our things? So I mentioned one, which is trauma, right? And we all got our trauma background. I have our own trauma background that when I saw Max's behaviors, oh my God, I just went right to catastrophizing mode. And also just felt myself getting activated, like for no reason, right? Had to go to therapy about it, people. Like you just do, right? I mean, you can't just ignore trauma. It's going to just, right. If anybody hasn't read The Body Keeps Score with Bessel van der Kolk, the body is just going to activate whether you tell it to or not. I mean, none of us are immune from that. Sometimes we are triggered because of our own unmet needs, right? So, things could have maybe we wanted in childhood, not really a trauma, but then you see these behaviors and our kids, we get frustrated by them. And the next thing you know, you're like, why am I so bothered by this today or right now, right? And even just lack of self-care, our own stress and lack of support, all of these things can really build for us. And lack of support could mean a partner that you're on the opposite side with. It could be a difficult family member who's like, I was very triggered by a lack of like community support and even just friends deciding they weren't going to be my friends anymore, because I had a kid that was impulsive, and dysregulated and all of that. And that, as I always like to talk about, is probably one of the most stressful parts of this whole experience for me. I was very lucky, had very supportive. The grandparents were really supportive, at least Grammy Hodge and my parents were very supportive of it. I would say that different levels of other people, like I don't feel at all obligated to other people, which is great because remember, Philomena told me not to give a crap what people think. And that was a gift. It's certainly a gift as a woman, but we need support. And maybe you're super stressed because you can't get good medical care or you can't get good mental health care. I find that to be everybody who comes to me is feeling that way, and they're going from provider to provider. Sometimes I get people who get good care along the way, and then they just really know that they need to reset their nervous system, but that's just not typical, right? And again, each one of these things takes a ding out of your nervous system, right? And then you react. And the more you react, the more reactive you become. I think one of the things that we worry about is that judgment from others, right? As I said, family members, lack of support, school. I mean, some of our kids really struggle with getting out of bed in the morning, getting their work done. Like I said, I always talk about the bitches on the bus stop. That's my story, right? So most of them moved. I don't even see them and whatever. So these pieces all can really tear you down. And future worries are very real. Who doesn't have a kid that you're not having a future worry about? Forget about it, whether you have a neurotypical or not. You're just worried what's going to happen in their life. But when you have a kid who's really struggling behaviorally, mental health wise, whether they're an internalizer or externalizer, you have an extra level of worry about who are their friends. Is this helpful? Is this not helpful? Do they have a support system? Do what's going to happen for college? What's going to happen for high school? Right? Okay. I know. Katie says, I'm catastrophizing. Just listen to this. I know. We've been there. I hear you, Katie. So and it's tough, right? And recognizing is the first part. So we can't do anything for ourselves if we don't recognize it. And in that hill may feel big. That's exactly why I did this calm parenting challenge. It's actually shocking when you implement little things how much easier it is to regulate, right? So I've been joking with everybody. And if you're, I've only posted it a couple of times, but we've been sharing it amongst all of our friends. Like we're so annoyed that our kids are ignoring us now. Even my easy kid is ignoring us. Like, hey, it's time for dinner. So we pulled out the karaoke machine, and we now say funny things on the karaoke machine, like it's time, Maxwell and Giancarlo report to the dining hall. Giancarlo had a stomach bug, and we were going, Giancarlo, report to the nurse's office. And they can't be mad at us. And we can't be mad because we're like, whatever. Plus, again, Mr. Hedge and I think we're like the funniest, coolest parents in the world. But I had to flip that script because I found myself annoyed that I was like, I am calling them for good things. So let me tell you, son, everybody wants Dr. Roseann's meals, right? My to my two good friends, Jen and Marla, are like food connoisseurs. And they told me and Dr. Rita Marie, I got the best house ever that you eat at, my house. My kids know that. So then I found myself being like, these ungrateful kids, they're so irritating me and all these things. And then I was like, we got to do something funny. And my husband's like, let's break out the karaoke machine, which we've used on and off. We try not to overuse things. So it's a great way to deflect. We're talking about those strategies. And I think sometimes we argue with our kids because maybe we have a values conflict with them, right? Whether it's the prioritizing their device, or you want them to attend religious services and they don't want to anymore, or whatever it is. It's just a different thing, right? This is generational. I had immigrant parents. Let me tell you, we had lots of values conflicts. And I can see it so clearly now, that it was really hard for them because they were different culture coming into American culture, and it created a lot of conflict. Obviously, it's all worked out really well. But it's still normal developmental. And when you add that to some of these other things, again, these are just amplifiers. I think one of the things that I see parents struggle with and actually don't see is they have unrealistic expectations for their child. So sometimes they're like, this is a classic situation that happens all the time. Like, we have somebody with an intensive right now, and they're very atypical in a positive way. So they have OCD, it's shut down the child's life. And they're like, hey, we told him this is just like a tip of the iceberg. We're going to be removing stress. This is just a jump start. Don't think you're coming out of here in 2 weeks and you're going to be like a brand new person. It's not happening. This is what our goals are. And I was like, wow, I didn't have to give him the Dr. Roseann speech, because usually I get somebody who's like, I had somebody a few years ago that thought their kid's OCD was 100% going to be cured in 7 weeks. And I was like, where did you think that was going to happen from? Like, those expectations, that's not even possible. It's not the way the brain works. So when we set up these expectations for ourselves, right? Maybe it's like, well, I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to get my kid to this therapy every day, or my kid's going to do, is going to eliminate this because we're going to go to that therapist once a week, and that therapist once a week after, 8 weeks, it should be done. Right. And nobody's promised that. So these expectations, whether there's a treatment or a behavior, right, a developmental expectation. Last week we had a parent-teacher conference, and it's always super pleasant with Giancarlo. He loves school. There's not a class he doesn't like, and he works hard. And as a triple remediated, triple deficit dyslexia, dyslexic, if anybody knows what that is, it means all three of the foundational components were completely deficient for him. And he has, through massive work, has overcome that. And so his teacher was like, Giancarlo, I would really love to help you with your spelling. And I was like, Mrs. Lamb, I really appreciate that, and go for it. But I didn't even think he'd be able to spell this good, And I was like, I don't want this kid to feel like, oh, I should be, I'm like, Giancarlo, you're fine. You're like your dad. You can't spell. Don't worry about it. We have voice dictation. And please don't think I'm saying you shouldn't raise the bar. I said, You're going to just keep working at it, like it's getting better. But, she was so sweet. How sweet was that? I want to help you with that. And I'm like, let's let him stay in the 4th percentile over there. Don't worry about it. He's fine. He's like a rock star. So what are our expectations? How do we manage them for both we think our child should do? The healing timeline expectations are never what you think. It looks like the stock market, everybody. Don't forget that. I'm going to say it as much as I can. We want a trending up stock market, but no, it's going to be a bumpy ride when you're there. And I think even just that and acknowledging that and being present in the day and present in those micro wins, wow, does it change your brain? And it gets you to think so differently about your child and their successes. And it reduces that friction and that stress, right? And when it comes to yourself, right? Sometimes not just that trauma, but sometimes we have poor emotional control, right? Whether it's because we're in a conflictual relationship with a partner, we have a terrible job, we have financial worries, we have trauma. How we react is going to be a trigger for our child as well, right? We can meet our kids with that anger and irritation, or we can meet them with calm most of the time, right? 80%, be 80%, everybody. But when we are consistently meeting them in an agitated way, and again, your neurotypical kids are going to piss you off too. So what can you do to diffuse that, right? We try to use a lot of humor in my house. My kids are really accustomed to it. And it does seem to just, right? Maybe it's a distraction. Maybe it's that talking after. And that's a big part of it. We can't project our own insecurities and worries onto our kids. And our subconscious brain will do that if we let it. And, wherever you are on this journey, this is a conversation about those triggers that your kids, the behaviors, and that long list of behaviors. Those are things that may really warrant direct intervention. We're not saying all those things aren't real. Who wants a kid that's like punching holes on the wall all the time, or not getting out of their bed because they're so depressed, or lying? These are all things that are very upsetting for you and that child, whatever age it is. Remember, a child could be 35. So, we do work with adults too. And a lot of times it's a stuck adult, but a lot of times we work with the parents. But just know this is that first part. What are those things? And now what are you going to do about it? And if you're really looking for solutions, doesn't matter, whatever solution, wherever you're at, whether you're looking for, something I can get a hold of right today. Today was a day that I had so many people reach out to me on Messenger today. Like I could barely keep up with the amount of contact that I had asking for different solutions. This is a way to get solutions that are matched for you wherever in your journey. And then it puts you on our newsletter list or emails, and you get great info, right? As I like to say, it's all from me. So you can go to drroseann.com/help, and it's going to guide you to exactly where you need to be. And just know if you are getting triggered, that's okay, but don't be stuck there. Do something about it. And you've got to calm that brain and body. You got it.